I want to, Bill, ask you this first question by using a quote from C. Wright Mills in his book Power Elite, or some other book. He said, if somebody starts talking about power and the use of power, you're automatically a muckraker.
Right. Power is a word that Americans are just very uncomfortable with. We're willing to talk about influence, and what we basically like to believe is that individuals and groups can join together to influence specific issues. But power is something that happens in Europe. It's part of the whole American experience to put no emphasis upon the idea of social class and to put no emphasis on the idea of power.
Why do you think this is?
I think that it comes out of the classic liberal tradition and out of American history of rebelling against the king in the American Revolution. And then from there, I think it's because the American experience has been seemingly very individualistic. That is, people have moved across the country. There is evidence of upward mobility. People have become wealthy. They have been able to get education and change their station in life a little bit. And I think that then reinforces this kind of belief. So that the idea that there is a power structure and a social structure is then something that we want to ignore. Now, I must say that we know it. We know that there's the other side of the tracks, and there's the people that live in the nice houses. We have all of these euphemisms that we use for power structures and for social classes.
What is the dominant view in the universities in the United States of what you call the power structure?
I think the dominant view in the university is something we call pluralism, which says that influence in the United States is exercised by specific individuals who come together as a coalition or an interest group to work on one particular kind of issue. So we always stay at the level of individuals and groups, and we never talk in terms of long-standing institutional structures, which sounds pretty abstract, but that gets down to things like corporations or foundations that for 60 or 80 years have been giving out great amount of money to influence directions that policy take. I think that whole kind of level drops out of our thinking, and I think that our educational system does reinforce that.
And what led you to take this different approach to power? Why did you become dissatisfied with the pluralist approach and start looking at the power structure in different terms?
I think that for me it was probably because of many of the events of the 1960s when people tried to exercise their rights, such as in the civil rights movement or such as in the anti-war movement of the time, or even in some of the attempts by consumer advocates such as Ralph Nader. Basically, when they seem to be meeting a stone wall, then you kind of think there may be something else more there. I like what Ralph Nader said in regard to your question. That he said is that if you want to find out about the power structure, you got to go out there and kind of bump up against it. The way you find it's there is when you hit these brick walls. And as I saw that happening, I got more interested in trying to see if there was this class and institutional structure. And basically, I started out in I think, a good old American way by trying to trace individuals in their activities. And what I found standing behind these individuals, I believe, are large corporations, large foundations, a series of research institutes, a series of policy discussion groups that make it so that a David Rockefeller is not merely an individual, but is in fact constantly involved, whether it's with a bank or his foundation or policy discussion group like the Council on Foreign Relations. And then one begins to see that there's an ongoing institutional structure. And so that even then when David Rockefeller retires, you see that the people that now run Chase Manhattan Bank, that now are the directors of the Council on Foreign Relations, continue to be the people that run the country. So that when you get a little time perspective on it, you start to see the individuals change a little bit, but that they come from the same social background and they come from the same large institutions. So I tried then to find that structure that stood behind our individual actions.
Well, let's take a look at this, and I guess we should start with the class structure and class nature of the United States. Now, we hear about middle class very frequently. It's written, a lot of things are studied about the middle class, and a lot of things have been written about the middle class. You see frequently lower middle class and lower, but you don't see too much written about upper class. Now, if there's a middle class, there has to be an upper, right?
Right. I think that there very definitely is an upper class in the United States, and indeed that's been the starting point of my research, is to start with social clubs, exclusive private schools, summer resorts, to start with what we can see if we will but look. To see these people as a set of interacting and intermarrying set of families who have developed a whole set of social institutions that preserve their way of life. Once we have located these various schools, clubs, resorts, retreats, debutante balls, then we can understand the historical continuity of social upper class in America. It's my belief that about 0.5% of Americans are part of what I would call a social upper class. And these people own about 20 to 25% of all the privately held wealth in the United States. That is, if we took all of your wealth, which might be your car, your house, your insurance policy, if we threw in your guitar, everything, we took all of that wealth, plus the stocks and bonds and real estate in America, we put all that in a big pile, 20 to 25% of all of that, 0.5% of the people have that in the United States. And what my thesis basically says is that those people that have that 20 to 25% of all the privately held wealth are not mere individuals that are scattered here and there and are kind of rare and don't know each other, but in fact they are closely knit. They know each other, they see the world the same way, they do discuss with each other the kinds of policies that they think would further their way of life. So in that sense, we then talk about them in this more sociological abstract sense, that they're not just families, because in fact there are these ongoing institutional kinds of structures, and they are structures that do matter, and they make a difference to a lot of Americans as they attempt to emulate these people, as they attempt to become part of these institutions and so on.